Welcome to today's live stream, everyone. We're going to go ahead and test out the plugin Bygen. So for this, it's a plugin I've started using earlier on in my Blender journey, and it became really useful right away to start testing out procedural methods in Blender. And lately, since I've been using a little bit more geometry nodes, I thought I'd come by and show today a little bit of how this plugin works. So the link is in the description below. It's a $1 purchase, and I think it's some of the best value you can get for really quick effects in Blender. So here we have a scene set up in Blender, and we've got different ones already. So usually, as we always do, we hit N in order to open up our plugin. I see I'm using, there we go, there I am. I was preparing another video earlier, that's what that was from. So, anywho, we've got our plane over here. We're going to start applying some different effects and kind of testing them out. So as usual, we hit N to open our plugins. We have Bygen right here. And we can see we can apply to selected or apply to the weight paint, right? So we'll get into that in a little bit. But for this plane, we hit apply to selected. We see it populates this little geometry all over the plane. If we switch over to rendered mode, we can see it has no texture on it. So we can start adding a texture and start getting some effect like this. If we go into the top view and we switch over into cycles, we could set the back into we could use, as I usually do, we're talking about plugin, but my go-to is always Ducky 3D's pack here. We can add this material to the back surface just to get a little gradient going. And for the actual pieces here, we'd have to go over into the modifier. So here for geometry nodes, we see it has a geometry node setup. So we'd have to visit the there we go. We'd have to visit the geometry node editor in order to see how this is set up. More importantly, we want to see towards the end, we have join geometry and we output the geometry. We want to be able to add in there to include a texture. So right here, we'll search a set material so that we can put that join geometry with a material set through right here. So we can add another material slot to this one, for example. And we can select another abstract piece. We can have these which emit light. So we can add that material in and then set it here. Oh boy, it looks like it joins the geometries before. So right here, rotate instances. Now we only have it set to there. But we only have that initial geometry. So we actually have to copy it over here to get our plane back. So we have a set material for the group input there. And we can set a different material for that one. It looks like it did come in with a material called barnacle, but I wasn't quite liking how that was looking. And now the join geometry with different materials can be joined as the output. So all we did was in between joining geometry and setting a material. There we go. We can have different materials transfers through. So the other material we actually wanted to use was, there we go, the bow metal. I'm not quite liking how that's looking on this one, but we'll go ahead and move on since we're just kind of testing out all the different ones and visiting all the different ones that this plugin has to offer. So we go back here to Bygen. But you can see how you can start quickly modifying and learning a little bit better. If you start learning some geometry nodes, like I really don't know that many, but I do know set material. So just by looking, okay, I have geometries being joined here just by working my way backwards from the end. And I see I have a group input, right? So I can assume that there's some geometry here that was plugged into join geometry, or when it did. When I opened it up, this group input was plugged into join geometry, but it was also plugged in with this of rotate instances. And by knowing that instances are geometries that are placed throughout different points or scattered throughout, I would then know that it's actually joining the barnacles with what is then the original geometry being inputted there. And just by putting a set material in between before they get joined, can have them have different materials. So I think that's really the biggest thing that I can mention about this plugin is the fact that it's a great way to start learning the geometry nodes, just because you have a built-in effect that you can get to know and start to modify and make your own. So if we go ahead and hide that plane, now we have a cube, and we can test out that cube with this one. So we'll hit apply to selected. And it looks like it places that torus and the monkey in place of the cube. So we see here, this one's a bit more complex. But we see that we have here CG growth. It's actually brought in a collection this time around. So we have Suzanne and the torus. Suzanne being the monkey face. And we can see right there, what happens if I move the monkey outside of, or move Suzanne outside of the dome, right? We start to see that those start to disappear and they only originate from what's inside the sphere here. So if I had it travel through, we'd actually have it grow and then come back out. And this is all rendering in cycles, by the way, in real time. We could do something a bit more interesting with our lights, such as get rid of all light and then add in just one giant flat light. Or actually even more interesting, I find that if I make a torus mesh, here we go, torus, and I go over here to add torus, I expand that little menu so I can make this radius much larger, like around the pieces, and much thinner with a lower minor radius. And I then set that to just a normal principled BSDF with an emission. We kind of just get this giant ring light around the scene that can light things quite interestingly. So we'll continue to experiment with this one. Let's see. We have also CG growth crystals. So if I move this cube, it looks like these are the base geometry, possibly, for how this is all generated. So if I click on this whole set right here, we can break it down a bit more. And again, we would go to the end of the group of nodes. So we see join geometry. We're again joining two sets of geometry here. So rotate instances. So what are those instances? We can see by changing a certain value on here that might not mess everything up. So for example, right here, there's a simple add function, which is adding 0.31. So I can go ahead and just turn that and I see, okay, like already I know that that's changing the size. So I'm just kind of looking for something that I can change the value of. And I see here there's a lot of values. So if there's 6 values on one node, I can pretty much assume that that's moving one of them is going to have very little influence over the overall geometry. Whereas I can find a node that has more, just one number and a very simple function here, and it has a big impact. So you see there, this is actually where I can change the overall size of those crystals. And if I go into negative, they sort of grow through the object rather than outward. So that's interesting in knowing how that's set up, because if I go into negative and it means it's pushing inward, right, into the object, I know that, okay, we're originating from certain points on this mesh, and the value being positive means we go outward, and it being negative, we go inward onto the object. So here we can mess with what the maximum and the minimum is. So I can make it really small and then go up to, there we go. So there we go. They're more evenly placed out and not so overbearing on the original object. But what if I wanted to add more, right? So it added a lot. So we can investigate a little bit, see where we can find. We see here we have realized instances. So it is bringing those crystals over there. Distribute points on faces. Density minimum and density max. Okay. So there we go. We slide the max and we get a whole lot more over the object. And that creates an interesting result on the inside. Wow. And if I mess with this material that's assigned to it, I'd have to see what material that is. So we got to find where the material is being assigned. Collection info. It might be from the original. Here we are, perhaps. Material 001. Yeah. So if I select that over here, I can change the color of it. Although I could also... Well, there is an emission factor here that's being set by the material nodes. So we'll go ahead and split over here. We have our geometries on the left, and we'll have our material nodes on the right. Sure, we can save this file. I just kind of did that on reflex. Here we go. Add new folder. Cool. So what I really wanted to do was bring in a bit more contrast to this image, because these crystals are producing light, and so you kind of lose some detail here. It looks pretty cool. But there would be a way to add in a bit more detail by doing a little in Blender Photoshop. So we can go over here to the noise texture. So I'm looking at the material here for the crystals. Oh, I just noticed on the chat for YouTube, EM, good to see you. Did your camera fall on the desk? No, I showed the wrong camera in the beginning. I was setting up for another video. But good time to mention, anybody in the chat, you can go ahead and ask some questions. Or if you have any questions or any suggestions about how I'm working or how I'm doing, or any questions in general related to Blender or 3D art, we're testing out the plugin Bygen today. So as I was saying, for this material, what I can do is I can do some little edits here by bringing in the ambient occlusion of this object. And I can get that through the object info. Ooh, node. Right. So here I can get the information on the object, such as its color, its alpha, its material index, and such. So if I bring over the color, right, that basically is going to set here the ambient occlusion, which is a very soft shadow through the object. So if I plug this in directly, we see that what that is just the general soft shadow if the object were just made out of clay. Oh, is that still happening? I did not transition that. There we go. Thanks for letting me know, EM. So with the clay render here, we have different shadows for the different faces, right? Since everything is kind of like a clay texture, each face of the crystal now sort of has a different tone to it, which can help it read much, much better visually. So if I plug this into the color of that principled BSDF, we can check out the difference. So here it is with the ambient occlusion plugged in, and here's with it unplugged, right? So if I wanted to edit this a little bit further, I can add in we can do a hue saturation value. That one helps us kind of switch through a lot. So we can desaturate a little bit. Or there's no saturation here. I meant to do hue, brightness contrast. There we go. I forgot, we're working with a black and white image. So we want to do the brightness contrast node here. Basically bring that down a little bit and reduce the contrast. So we have some more dark shadowed areas underneath. But we don't have such a drastic, such a exaggerated effect like we had before. So the lower we place the contrast, and then we can tweak the brightness a little bit to bring that back up. Maybe let's shut down the ring light. Anyway, that's just some edits we can quickly do by messing with the material of the object. Those are some interesting views. And we can move on to the next. But this is really cool to be able to move it like this. I mean, let's see how fast that can work rendered. That's pretty cool. And if I bring back the ring light, does it do anything? We could see here. It's really astounding how quickly this works. And I kind of have like a medium tier rig, so it's interesting to see this on the more expensive GPUs if it would just basically at this point flows completely. Looks like I broke it there going too fast. So there are some limitations. We'll go ahead and hide that. And, oh, meant to hide all of it. Where are my crystals at? Okay. Where are my crystals at? And we'll bring back our light ring. Where did it go? There we go. Okay. So we can use this cube to try out another one. So this could be interesting. Volume effects. That's a little different. So rather than applying onto the surface, it's actually filling it with something. I'm going to disable this from camera. You can do that by selecting an object and going to visibility and then shutting off ray visibility or just visibility. You can turn it off for renders and viewports. Oh, I meant to have it in viewports, but hide it in camera. So we want to keep it in renders also. Ray visibility, hide it from camera, and there we can see the lights affecting, but it's not so jarring. That's cool, a whole mess of cables. I'm very curious to see how this is going down, because my main recollection for volume effects would be to just add fog, like you can fill a cube with fog or a sphere with fog. Done that a few times in many videos, but we have here a material for a wire 1 and wire 2. Curve to mesh. So we have a bunch of lines that are then being, right, because we have a curve, and then that's converting into a 3D object by combining two curves. We have a curve and a profile curve. Make that a bit larger and hide off our shader for now. Set curve tilt. So I suppose that is how the curve is going to modify in order to continue following the cable. You can see if you zoom in a lot, it kind of loses it because it's clipping itself a little bit, but from far away, you can read it just as a mess of cables. Let's try that on a torus. We can select this object and then select the cube, Control L, and hit copy modifiers. That didn't quite work on the torus, it seems. So we can add, I gotta make it probably larger, like that. What is this music? Sure. Okay, so that's interesting. It's not just accounting for the inside of the object, but the entire space the object occupies. And those don't seem to be broken, they just seem to be cables running straight on. I'm going to select my light over here and move it higher so we can see what's going on. That's pretty abstract. All right. Can we do something cool here? If I set up a camera. Oops. I need to do Control Alt 0. Control Alt 0 to move the camera over to the position that I'm looking at. And with that, we can check out that material. So we move over the shader editor and we want to check out what it is that we have assigned here. So the material, well, we already saw it's called wire. So we can just switch over here and select wire. That's taking a moment to load. Okay. So we have our base color and we have an emission color. Well, no, there's not. It's just black. So I see we have one color set here and then the other one set for wire 2. So that's how the colors are designated. So the blue is pretty cool. We can go over and select. Actually, I'm going to also mess with this material a little bit. What if I made it metallic? That's pretty nice. Okay. And we go to wire 2. And I'm going to set it to white instead. Yeah, it's taking a little bit to load on these materials. Probably because there's so many wires, because there's so many objects using this material generated by these geometry nodes. We can just turn that into white. Okay. And as far as how this is controlled, I'm going to hide the torus for now so we can just preview it on the cube. We can check out over here. So we have the randomizer. So if we turn that down, I think we're going to have to delete our torus. It's slowing down the computer quite a bit, or start a new file. So if we take away the randomizer, it actually just becomes a regular pattern. We can put it at 0.5. Let's see how it designates. I guess it's just, yeah, how much it deviates from running alongside the object. Density factor. So if we turn that down, can we get something a bit looser? So stretching the object. If you stretch the object, you may want to hit Control A to then apply all transforms. Because since I stretched the cube, it's reading that it should stretch the cables. But then, there we are. If we hit Control A to apply that scale transform, then it recalculates your geometry nodes. All right, let's go ahead and hide that. And I'm going to copy my light ring. And I'm going to bring it into a new Blender file to continue testing one more. We'll do one more of these from Bygen. And again, link in the description below if you'd like to check it out. It costs $1. I think it's a great bang for the buck. Well, that's from yesterday. Copy objects. There we go. Paste it in. And in here, we can test out one last one. So I like this one here. I think I've tried this one before, the mesh effect parametric. So we apply that to the cube. We see that it disappears. And it's probably because we need a bit more faces on it. So we'll go ahead and tab into it. Oops. Tab into it and do Control R, scroll up so we can add some faces. And we need some on the other axis as well. Okay, perhaps we need to make it larger. So we'll go into edit mode and make it larger. That's strange. Let's try something else. Because it is subdividing it even. We'll try another geometry, something that has more faces. Perhaps Suzanne. Well, That's a bummer. Is that broken? Maybe I need to update the plugin. Or is the build animation... Ah, okay. Well, that should be a bit clearer, but that's fine. We have a... Perhaps it's the... As we run through the keyframes, it develops. So if I take it back to 18, it looks like it's a time-based effect. So as you move forward, there's our cube back. As we move forward, it fills in all those areas. So animated, that would look like that. So let's see if we could preview that live. We'll do part 2 without crashing. So we get into rendered view, set it as usual to cycles, and setting this pitch dark. We'll lower the intensity of our light. Oh, we have another light in here. Forgot to delete. There it is. So, no material came with it. We can try something again really quick from Ducky 3D. And we can still preview it live. Well, not live, like half speed. This is working pretty well. So let's see a little bit if we can change the size of these bits. And it really messes, not just with breaking up the geometry. We bring this up a little bit, or we move it over to Catmull Clark. So right here at the very top, we see we have a stack of modifiers, and at the top we have a subdivision of the surface. Hi there. Thanks for joining in there in the chat. Feel free to ask any questions or comment. We have over here a modifier for subdividing the surface. So the Catmull Clark method will do more smoother operations than if we just do simple, right? The way that we subdivide the geometry is a bit more jagged. So we can keep it on Catmull Clark. That's the default that it comes with. Displacement. So this is actually moving away from the original geometry. So if I lower the strength, we see it's closer to the original geometry. And if I lower it all the way, we have the original geometry. And if we turn back, we can see there now it's all broken up as well. So I kind of like taking away the displacement here, just to preview what the effect is doing. We have then a edge split. So that probably determines how these faces are then broken up. Modifying that angle doesn't seem to do too much. So we'll keep it on the original at 30. Smoothing, I'm not gonna mess with that because it might come back to haunt me. Anytime you have a really high dense or high quality model and you mess with its smoothing or its subdivisions to an unknown degree, it can cause a crash. So I'd just rather avoid that right now. Wonder how this would look like from inside. Well, that's pretty interesting. So that's a nice one. I like the surface quality they can give. You can probably do a pretty interesting landscape with that. So if I bring it in once more. Yeah, like if I added another one to have just like as a, say like a water level. We can get into Blender Kit for more scenic assets, materials, water. And I kind of like the look that this has of just like icebergs. Maybe there's an ice material. there is ice imperfections. Now this looks like, ice rock. These are icy surfaces. Wow, there's a lot of ice, actually. Cracked ice, blue ice. Is that what I'm looking for? Ice blue? I think I might go with this one. So that's taking a little bit now that we have, let's throw in the denoiser. So that's really interesting for environment design, because you can start throwing some of these photoreal materials and then just have these procedural effects start to generate quick geometries in a sort of randomized way. But from the camera view, you know, if you were to do something else to this, like say we go back to Blender Kit and we look for a boat, but we look for it in models. Whoops. We have ourselves a paper boat in the Arctic. We can take it a step further now and just hit HDRI and put, I don't know if the South Pole might show up on here or something similar. Or if we do winter. Not with all that going on. That's probably what? A snowfield? If it weren't for the trees, I'd say we'd be set. Well, now I'm getting like, I don't really like that ice material. I want to switch it out, but this is really the point I wanted to get across with this plugin. If I now go through the time lapse, I'm not going to do that in rendered view, but we could see actually the ice sort of generating around the ice boat. I mean, not purposely around the ice boat. We can move the ice boat, the paper boat, to this little opening there. It's kind of heart-shaped. And from the top view, except rotating it, we might see that coming up. That's kind of fun. Did I do it in reverse? Either way. That looks kind of weird, but interesting. You can't really tell what it is unless you kind of move the camera around. Either way, this is totally jacking on my GPU. I should have also changed down here the performance of the render. So it's only rendering, once I set it up again, it'll render only at 30% quality. And that's as much as we can get for a preview. All right, well, there we are. Just wanted to introduce a bit of this plugin and give it a shout out because I think I should be using it more just for quick mockups. So you could use these really easily in different sessions. So wonder if you could stack them also. If I were to take this and apply all of them, can I then apply this alien texture to that geometry. Looks like I could, but it perhaps needs more subdivisions. Yes, more subdivisions. So we can have some simple subdivisions up to 4, and then we can add some Catmull-Clark ones to smoothen it out. So there we just stacked 2 of the geometry nodes on top of each other, or 2 of these effects. We added in the mesh effect to break up this one surface, and then we added this displacement effect to add the sort of alien looking texture to it. Now it kind of looks like it could work as sand or rocks, like a beachy sort of situation rather than an ice situation, but either way. Pretty interesting how this can give different effects. Applying these in and then learning what the geometry nodes are doing here to have this come about. So this one doesn't necessarily have geometry nodes, but this one comes in as modifier stacks. But these other ones that we've been using, you know, they're either a stack of modifiers or they're straight on geometry nodes, which you'll still see here. We actually do have a geometry node here. Plane alien. So this one uses both as opposed to the others. We see here plane alien. There we are. We have our displacement from an image, and we have a procedural effect, Voronoi texture. So we change the scale here. We should be seeing the texture change on the surface. We'll go back to solid view so we can see that more clearly. So by messing the scale or the randomization, that's probably the fine texture on there. Oh, it's not plugged in. What we have here, we pick which one gets plugged in. So there's 3 methods actually to this one. We have organic scattered. So I increase or lower the number here. We see it can get, all right. That was way too much. We can bring it back down to 1. And 0.1. Although that's kind of cool too. And lower the 0.1, 0.05. Okay, we can check out a different one. So triplanar. So we can just replace where this one gets plugged in with this other one. And it is slightly different. It looks like it uses the same image or similar images, but has a different modification to it, or just a different mapping to it. That made it really, really soft and actually punch in. If we go negative, it punches into the texture down there. And we see that rendered. That's actually looking closer to what the surface of ice might look like if it were even more subtle. Anywho, we can try this last one called Procedural. So we plug that one in here. Ooh, kind of missed my mark there. Oh, it's really, really slowing down my computer. Maybe I should have just previewed this in solid view. Oh, and we glitched out also. Now that we're not in solid view, let's see what this looks like. Well, that's just kind of terrifying. Very dystopic. But if we take it down, so it's at 11, maybe if we take it down to 1. Oh, I messed with the scale value here. That's really what's messing with it. Let's turn that back down, or let's put that value back, the 11. Waiting out here, just kind of glitching out for a second. There we go. Let's put the scale back down to 10. And lower, 1. I think we also do need to take down the value. Let's put that to 1. There we go. That's pretty surreal. But I can imagine how I could even start duplicating these and maybe embed them into like a snowy mountain or something, or have them even float on the ocean. I don't know. Just kind of seeing what this material is doing with this surface condition and what is it reading like. But it's obviously these abstract processes that by modifying them, you know, or even just adding some other modifiable objects, you can get different results. If we go here to multiply, I think we got to take this number down like how we had taken the other one down, 0.05. There we go. Not sure if that's part of the material, the sort of leathery piece, or if it's part of the modifier. I think it's part of the material. We go to 0.5 on the other one. That's even yeah, just experimenting here. We still have our little boat floating there, but experimenting with this plugin and kind of throwing on different materials on different patterns and get these different interesting results. I wonder if I go into this water material, colors, can I make it emit light? Doesn't seem like it. Well, in there, I'm gonna set up a render from the previous file to wrap up with, and as I render that, if you want to type any questions into the chat. I know I've been streaming in LinkedIn now, but to be honest, I see only stuff coming in from YouTube. So I'm gonna have to check back and see if there's anything coming in from LinkedIn, or if in fact we're not getting things through from LinkedIn. Where is my camera view for this one? And unhide everything. There's my cables. So here's a chance for Q&A or AMAs, ask me anything, as we wait for this render to pull through. Either way, love to have you all visit. Thanks for showing up on the chat as usual, EM. And the other person that dropped in, your name is in a language I can't read, but shout out to you. Yeah, this doesn't look as great as I thought it was going to look. I think I have to tweak it, or I don't remember the lighting quite well here. Let's try a crystals one. Great Monday kickoffs. Thank you, Yem. I appreciate that. The Monday kickoff is an email I send out every Monday of stuff I'm working on and stuff that's going to be coming up. And thanks. I appreciate that you appreciate it. Love that. I do have a lot of a good time writing it, because it makes me sort of think, like, in a way, what am I grateful for? Or like what makes the stuff that I'm working on fun and exciting? And kind of putting that together is yeah, it feels good. And I like that it's great that other people find it useful or valuable as well. All right. I think I like this a lot better. If we maybe, I don't know how to set up the camera here in an interesting way. Probably like that. And instead of doing a blank background, I could do, oh hey, I could do the ice from the other file. Let's copy that in, why not? I'll be up and up again. Oh, is it on Instagram? More people need to read it. Did I read that right? Is it on Instagram? I guess, you know, that's not a bad idea. I can just sort of clip the different sections. If there's not too much writing, or if I format it in a smart way. um, yeah, that's not bad. And make little carousels. Thanks for that. Lovely idea. And I wanted to switch over to here to ice. Ice rock. Our ice has changed quite a bit when I was first working on it. But that's okay. Now that I've copied it, I can paste it into here. And just sort of rotate it like a backdrop to the camera. Awesome. And let's just go into that material for the ice and give it a bit more color. Maybe like a deeper blue or purple ice. Sure. We'll go ahead and hit render with that. I'm going to hide my light ring here. I just want to lower here my samples. They're not too many. 1200. Denoiser, yes, please. Performance. 512 tiles. Color management. Filmic log. High contrast. I explained this in a few of my streams why I kind of do this. Makes it a bit more photoreal. And we can render out that image. Ha! Let's just hit the render preview so it's nice and quick for y'all on the stream, and I can make sure I set up my camera correctly for getting this out into the world. But thanks for joining in on this stream. Always good to have you. See you on the next one, hopefully. Come back. Tell your friends. Tell anyone who you think might be interested. Just here hanging out, testing out some things in 3D. And love to have some suggestions back and forth or questions from anybody dropping by. I'm going to do a better job of promoting myself. That's on me. But yeah, still just testing out the streaming life and feeling it out. So thanks for joining in as you catch me early on in the process. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye there.